Wander Wealthy Podcast, episode 182 with Kristin Molenaar. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Wander Wealthy Podcast. If you're new here, warm welcome to you. My name is Tess. I am the host of this show, founder of Wander Wealthy, and money coach turned business coach for money coaches. Here on the show, we love to talk to various entrepreneurs who might be able to help you as a money coach build, grow, scale your online coaching business. And today we have a very special interview with someone who I think is going to provide some amazing tips to you all when it comes to outsourcing, freeing up a little bit of your schedule so you can do more of what you love. But before we get into introducing this week's guest, I do want to share who is sponsoring this week's episode, which is, of course, my amazing program, the Wealthy Coach Blueprint, a 12-week coaching program for new, aspiring, or current money coaches who have been in the world building their money coaching business but are a bit frustrated with how to scale up their business or how to really get the results they wished they were going to get when they first started. Throughout the 12 weeks, you get to go through an 8-phase core curriculum where you will be, yes, challenged and held accountable to identify and validate your niche market, build out your life-changing coaching program, and be able to seamlessly and effortlessly market and sell that program and start changing real people's lives. So just a little fun fact, just a little over 3 months ago, back in May, is when we kicked off the last round of the program. And for the 6 members who started right around that time, they have generated over $20,000 in their business. That is over $20,000 brand new dollars generated from either completely restructuring their business because their money coaching business, the way it was structured before the blueprint, wasn't helping them get to where they wanted to go, or completely building a business from the ground up, building something they hadn't had in place ever before. And what that $20,000 means in addition is that not only are they opening up new opportunities for themselves to jump into this new business and a new world of making a difference and making a big impact, but they are touching so many lives, because with every dollar means there is another human life connected to that who has committed to themselves to completely change their relationship with money, their personal financial situation, and actually overcome any obstacles that are standing in their way and work towards their goals. And that's what the students and the money coaches who have joined the Wealthy Coach Blueprint are out there doing, because they committed, because they believed in themselves to become successful and impactful and life-changing money coaches. They showed up to the blueprint, they followed the steps, they went through the phases, they got the support they needed to overcome any of their own obstacles so they can show up and make an offer that is meant to change their ideal clients' lives. And I am just so honored to be a part of that journey. And I'm also so excited and so proud of the money coaches who have already made it through the blueprint and have opened the door of new opportunity for themselves to build this business, to scale it up, and to impact real lives. So if you are feeling the call to money coaching, or you already have your money coaching business, but you're just not seeing the results you want, or you're not sure how you're supposed to scale this to a point where it feels sustainable and is truly impactful, then I invite you to head to wanderwealthy.com/apply, check out all the details of the blueprint, and sign up for a strategy session. There are only a couple days left where we can get on the phone together to make sure that the blueprint is the right fit for you. We can discuss all of the questions that you might have for me, and we can ensure that it will be a good fit moving forward. So wanderwealthy.com/apply. All right. right, back to this week's episode and guest interview. I am joined by Kristin Molenaar, who is the founder of the virtual agency Yes Boss VA. It's a virtual agency for virtual assistants. And at Yes Boss, Kristin and her team help clients go from burned out solopreneurs to empowered and supported CEOs through online business management and digital marketing support. Yes Boss runs your online business for you so you can scale it like a boss. And Kristin is really the ultimate entrepreneur enthusiast. She lives by the mantra, work less, make more. And it's enabled her to build her six-figure business while working an average of just 5 hours per week. Her mission is to ultimately eradicate entrepreneurial stress, which I love, and we really dug into that in this week's episode. What I really wanted to know from Kristin was her own expertise around helping especially newer coaches or newer coaches who are now realizing I could use some help, really helping them identify when the right time is to start delegating or outsourcing some of the work that is on their plate. We also talk about what Kristin's number one tip is for making a successful hiring decision, and she shares a bunch of goodies as it relates to that question. And we also talk about some of the different things that could be outsourced. So this episode should be really helpful for you if you are at the point where you're ready to take some tasks off of your plate and work with someone else. So without further ado, here is episode 182 with Kristin Molenaar. Kristin, welcome to the Wonderwealthy podcast. I can't wait to dig into today's subject or topic of this episode, but just wanted to say welcome to the show. So happy to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So I did a formal introduction before we dove into this interview, but I'd love for you to just share with us your story about how you got into the world of entrepreneurship and now running a virtual agency where you match entrepreneurs with VAs and you're working to eradicate entrepreneurial stress.
Yeah, so I left my last corporate job in late 2014. Because I was being treated not that great by a boss. Loved my job, have always really loved working, but realized that maybe I could create a better environment for myself by becoming self-employed.
Mm-hmm.
So I ventured into that world. Because my last corporate job was in the beauty industry, I helped people bring their skincare and cosmetic brands to life. Like they would literally come to us with an idea and we would do the whole process. That was my corporate background. So I figured I would do that for my work. You know, I would do something within that industry. Mm-hmm. But I say I failed at entrepreneurship. That first year was awful. I made $5,000 the entire year. I went from, having my own place and a nice car to living with my in-laws and like struggling to make car payments. Mm-hmm. It was just horrible that first year. And so that's how I kind of stumbled on the virtual assistant business. I had heard about, hiring virtual assistants, and I was aware of this from, exploring being an entrepreneur, right? And I needed something that would just get me out of my in-laws, that would pay my bills, that would get me some degree of independence again. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to sacrifice my freedom. Like I loved being able to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. So I thought, you know what, I'll just get a virtual assistant gig. Like I'll go and I'll look for an online job, right? Mm-hmm. So I went on a website called hiremymom.com and I very quickly got my very first client. That client paid me like $15 an hour. We agreed that if he paid me $15 an hour the first month, I would prove to him that I was worth 20.
Nice.
And so that's kind of how I got into things. But I realized very quickly actually that I had stumbled unknowingly into a new business. So I wasn't able to take like this entrepreneurial thinking, I wasn't able to get it out of my head. Mm-hmm. So what happened very quickly is I got a project from this new client. I think it happened within like 2 or 3 weeks. He asked me to write blogs for him. And I was sitting down writing blogs and I was like, I hate this. Like, I'm writing blogs about the nursing industry. I have zero interest in the nursing industry. Like, do I really have to do this right now? And I realized in that moment, the way that my contract with him was written as an independent contractor, I could bring a subcontractor in to do the work for me. So I found an intern who I could pay minimum wage in her state, which was like $7 or $8 at the time. And I hired her to do the blogs for me. And that's when I got like my first taste of like, I could make $7 or $8 an hour doing nothing. And I was like, oh my gosh, maybe that's not a lot of money, but I'm literally doing nothing and I could scale this endlessly. And so that's how I stumbled into like the virtual assistant world, but then also realized like, hey, I'm sitting on a business. This isn't a job. It just depends on how I approach it. And that dictates like what I want to do with it moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, what a way to kind of reshape what you originally intended and thought. And I love that you shared, especially that first year and the failure that you experienced. I think so many of us see and even hear like, coaches and marketers talking about how they made six figures in their first 6 months. And honestly, when I see that, it makes me feel like crap because I'm like, I didn't hit six figures in my first 6 months. I was probably making like $20,000 in maybe in my first year, but it was through pieced together work. It wasn't even through what I set out to do. And I just love to hear kind of what your experience is with seeing a lot of the flashy numbers and hearing about that, and then thinking back to your own experience and thinking about all the other new entrepreneurs who are having their first year and not seeing those numbers either.
I mean, the thing that goes through my mind is, okay, how many businesses did you have before this? Like, how many other things were
True.
you attempting before this happened? Because maybe if right from the onset you have the cash to hire a really incredible coach, but it's also, I think, kind of hard to find the right coach for you when you're
Yeah.
brand new, especially because when you're brand new, I think what happens is Facebook catches wind that you're now an entrepreneur and they're hitting you with all these marketing messages, and all the marketing messages are teaching you that you need to learn it for yourself, and they're all these like DIY hacks. So you end up getting stuck in this like attempt to figure out how to figure everything out for yourself.
Yes.
And because we want to save money and we're bringing like maybe our personal finance beliefs into our business and treating our business like we're treating our personal finances, we feel like we have to hoard everything. It's frustrating. And I love that we're having this conversation because I just feel so sad for people that get stuck in that trap initially and feel like because they didn't hit some kind of like financial mile marker that they are some kind of failure. This is how I, in hindsight, look at it. I look at it like I was able to get paid to learn. So I went to school for hard knocks. Like I went to school by failing and learning how to pick myself up and learning from the failure moving forward. Alternatively, I could have went to like business school and I could have paid for an education and come out of it and just having paid for it. Well, I didn't. I just went right into business and I learned along the way. But yes, I made $5,000, but at least I made $5,000. Like, I don't know, financially, I think that I turned out all right. And it
Yeah.
eventually snowballs. You've just got to stick with it.
I think that's the key is so many people, especially because they look at this is what I was unable to accomplish. They accomplished something, but it was much smaller than what they're comparing it to. And whether it's your actual coach who's talking about how much money they made, or it's someone else online who's talking about it, you're looking at that and you're going, well, something must be wrong with me because I can't do that. And I think first and foremost, we have to understand that everyone comes from such a different, this might be their third or fourth business attempt.
Right.
It also might be that they come from different levels of privilege. And there's so many things that we don't know about the personal experience, but also just the fact that like, if that person is on their third or fourth business attempt, you're on your first. It just takes time, and it takes time to realize that you don't fail until you decide to pull out and be done with it. Right?
Yeah. Right. Right. I
So
also see that a level of success is how quickly you're willing to get up after you failed.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's a resiliency thing that you learn with tenure in business, right? Like
Hmm.
you and I, if we decided that we wanted to start a new business, we would be able to experience success a whole lot quicker because we understand that it's just trial and error, trial and error. And it wouldn't be a mindset thing for us. It would just be like, I know to expect this. I'm just going to keep getting up and doing the next thing. But when
Yeah,
you're new, you're not used to that because in the real world, I say quote unquote real world, with the regular job, you're expected to right away understand what you're doing and start climbing. There's no
exactly.
learning period, but nobody's handing the how to you as a new entrepreneur.
Exactly. And I mean, just to riff off this, now we're riffing. The the real world, the quote unquote real world, is such a like natural progression model that
Yes.
and you anticipate. And someone
Yes.
is there to tell you, like, do this, don't do this. And whether, that person is a mentor or they're your boss, they've been there. They're specifically, given to you to be your boss and your manager and your mentor, and or they're all three different people, but they're telling you exactly what to do, what not to do, how you, like, as long as you hit XYZ, you get to go to the next level. And that just doesn't exist in entrepreneurship. And even if it does, I'm a business mentor and a coach, but it's really hard to find the right people too, like you had mentioned. I mean, I remember wanting to hire my first business coach and being like, I don't know, should I just Google it? That seems like I'm going to get not the right fit. And
Right.
it's a hard decision to make, and it's hard to find too.
It is. It's very hard to find. Yeah.
So I'd love to kind of go back to your story. And this whole podcast originated as a money podcast. And now we talk a lot about business, but I love to keep talking about money, obviously. I'm always like, let's talk about how much you make. But I'd love to start with your money story and really, how you grew up around money and how money did or did not play a role in your life, from your childhood all the way into adulthood, and maybe what you learned or what you've experienced along the way.
It's a good question, and it's something that I've thought about more recently. I actually had a conversation with my grandmother, and I said to her, every time our family gets together, we always talk about retirement accounts. So that kind of gives you insight, and maybe it gives you some insight into how I grew up. But I grew up, my parents split up when I was 8 years old, and so my mom had stayed home full time, and she now had to rely on my grandparents to help pay our rent while she then went and got an education so that she's ultimately ended up being a school teacher. So I experienced some of that. Like, I didn't grow up with a lot of money. When my mom married my stepfather, things changed a bit for us and we no longer struggled. But by that time I was 13 or 14 at that time. But this is like what really stands out to me about what I learned growing up. I learned that you work hard and you stay dedicated to like what you're doing. And I say that, like, to give an example, my stepfather, my father-in-law, my grandpa, and now my brother all worked for local government at like the government center, which is, in my mind, growing up, it was like the most stable job you could get. You get a job out of high school, you start at an entry level and you work your way up and you literally stay there until you retire in your 60s. And
Hmm.
it has good retirement, it has good benefits. Like, you just don't question it. You're looking for security, you're not looking for fulfillment, because I mean,
Yes.
the conversations I hear about how fulfilled they are very, very hard to come by. That's not
But
something that
man,
us
do they
often
have
talk
a
about.
great retirement account.
Great retirement, right? Oh my gosh. It's so funny how many times I was badgered. Well, I feel like if my mom hears that, she'll be like, we didn't badger you. But I felt
I don't think
badgered,
your
like,
mom's listening, but
no,
maybe.
probably not, right? No, she won't listen. But from like 17 into my mid 20s, I was just badgered about, like, are you putting enough money in your saving or in your retirement account? Have you opened your retirement account? And, you know, it's great. I think that retirement is great, but my thinking as an entrepreneur has been, I have felt so different from my family because I've always been pretty entrepreneurial. And I didn't know it at the time because I didn't have any examples of what entrepreneurial was, but I would do things like sell stationery with my friend in her neighborhood door to door. And like we got our first quote unquote big account by selling a bunch of stationery to a school teacher. And so it was like this big thing. I would make money I did mystery shopping for a while. Like you get paid. I don't know if I've ever said that publicly, but you get paid to like go to a restaurant and report on your experience. That was so fun for me. Got paid to like watch people's dogs and like literally everything under the sun. If I could do it in a way that was non-traditional, that's the way that I like to make money. It's just been a passion of mine since I was tiny.
Yeah.
So, being an entrepreneur, and I think that was maybe the hardest thing for me, especially the first couple years of business, because I came out of that $5,000 a year, and I just felt my family didn't explicitly say this to me ever. They were always very outright supportive of things, but I thought in my head, they've got to think I'm crazy. Like I'm struggling, and it would be so easy for me to just go get a job. Like I'm very employable. I've always been able to get whatever job I wanted to get, but I was choosing not to do that. And so I was wrestling with this. Am I being irresponsible? Because I'm choosing this path that is really hard for me and I'm not making any money. And I could choose the path of least resistance would be to go get another job and get paid really well. For some reason, I was very persistent and I had tasted some freedom and I just clung to it. I never thought about myself being resilient, but looking back, it's like, dang, I have been very resilient. And that's why I'm where I am now. That second year I made like 30,000, and then the 30,000 went to 60,000, and then 100,000 is like, whew, finally we're seeing some progress here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes time. And I think that's the really hard part, especially if you come from like your parents either badgering you or heavily encouraging you to like be the responsible one and do the right thing, and whether it's from your parents or you just followed maybe a certain career path and then you decided like this isn't fulfilling, I should change, but then from that career path you learned about the importance of having a retirement account and keeping your debts low and doing all these things, and especially my audience, we're a bunch of money coaches. So technically you want to like make the responsible decision with your money and optimize it and maximize it. But if you're a money coach, if you're an aspiring money coach and you aspire to do it full time, you're also thinking about the fact that you want to do things a little bit differently. You want to feel more fulfilled in the work that you do and have a bigger impact. And that might mean, especially in the shorter term, when you're just starting out, taking a bit of a pay cut. And then you have to like work in that gray area of, am I being responsible, or is this where I just need to like turn up the persistence?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a personal decision. My husband and I, when we got married almost 10 years ago now, we moved to the Midwest, and in the Midwest, it's a lot easier financially to live. Things are a lot cheaper. We both got part-time jobs when we first were out there, and we had a lot of freedom because we worked part-time. We did not have a ton of money, but we had a lot of freedom and we spent a lot of time together. And that was when we decided that we would rather have freedom over finances. So it was a very personal decision. But then when I became a business owner, it was this balance of, well, what is enough financially where it makes sense, because I don't want to be living in my parents' house. Like
Right.
that's
Yeah.
not a wise decision for that to be my goal. But not sacrificing that freedom. So you definitely have to figure it out for yourself. Like what is it that I want? And let me clear out the clutter of what I feel like other people are saying that I should want. And heck, it goes back to what you said with like the people online that are saying that they made $100,000 their first year. Okay, great. But is that like, what is your goal? Don't make other people's goals your goal.
Yes, I preach. I say that all the time, and I think that is so important. And it is on every level, not only from income, but also like, what do you want to be spending your money on, and how much do you really need to live off of? And I love that you brought up that you and your husband took part-time jobs, because it's even the idea of like going off on your own, and I've talked to my legal husband many times about this. He's like, don't call me that. That makes me sound sketchy, but that's what he is. But we've talked a lot about like what is success and what feels like fulfillment. And there is that, I think I just recorded a podcast episode regarding the money buying happiness thing and how there is a threshold, right? You do need money to be able to figure out what like your comfort is and what will be that enoughness. But then knowing like, would you rather have more time or more money? And you can have a little bit of both as well, but that's where you get to personalize it for yourself.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes there becomes such an ambition to reach the level of success that other people have put on you that you end up
Yes.
getting there and being really burnt out. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where we see a lot of clients coming to us. They're just like, okay, cool. I've reached $100,000 a year, but I'm completely stressed. I can't build my business anymore because I've spent all of my time doing this thing. I would like to have some time back with my family, in the middle of COVID. If your kids came home and now you're homeschooling mom, like what's going to give here? And
Right.
so a lot of people are coming to us like, well, I've hit this glass ceiling, and if I want to spend less time working, I literally am going to be sacrificing my income. And you just have to weigh these things out. You don't want to be going after some kind of goal and being so set on it that you're sacrificing the way of life as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so this will very smoothly take us into the tangible tips round. And I want to really pick your brain around what you are an expert at, which is the outsourcing and delegation world, and really kind of identifying when the right time is to offboard some of your own work. And especially during the pandemic is a big time for those who do have children or other family members that rely on them to be present but also be working. I mean, what a great way to take that opportunity to find some additional help if you can do it, and bring someone in to take on some of your workload. So before we talk about that, I just love to start simply because some people who are listening are very new to the entire entrepreneurial world. So let's define outsourcing and delegation and virtual assistants.
Yeah, I love that you're distinguishing and starting with the person who's in the beginning, because I have very specific feedback for the best way for somebody in that position to get started versus somebody that, like, the more traditional person that comes to us is at that like 100,000 threshold and they're ready to scale, but they just don't have time to. So we're
Right.
talking about two very different kinds of people. My take honestly is that you should delegate as soon as possible. And so let
Mm-hmm.
me give an example of somebody who's very, very, very early on in their entrepreneur career, how they can take advantage of delegation to really help them grow their business a whole lot quicker. So we all, when we become an entrepreneur, one of the first things that we hear from like a tactical or technology perspective is that you want to build an email list. Like, that's a good way to connect with your audience. You want to get people on that list. So you have to have, some kind of web page, and you have to have a freebie offer, and you then link everybody to your email list. Well, I don't know about you, Tess, but when I became an entrepreneur, I was like, cool, that sounds great. I don't know how to do that. I had never built a website before. I ended up with Squarespace and MailChimp, and I'm like, cool. I don't get it. Like, I don't know how these things communicate. And I mean, this is probably, I could be talking to somebody who literally decided they wanted to become an entrepreneur yesterday. Today, they're facing this dilemma. Like, well,
Right.
how do I attract an audience? How do I get out there and get people on my email list? Okay, this is my suggestion. Hire somebody to do it for you. What I see a lot of entrepreneurs doing is figuring it out all for themselves and adapting to this DIY mentality. And I really believe it becomes a way of thinking. Are you going to choose the way of thinking that you're just going to be a DIYer? And I want you to know, if you choose to be a DIYer, you're going to be choosing to do things a little bit more slowly. If you
Mm-hmm.
choose to bring in people who can help you escalate and grow and scale and just do some of these tactical things, you're going to be able to go a lot faster. So this is what I see. Entrepreneurs are like, cool, I need to figure out how to link my Squarespace to my MailChimp, whatever. They spend like 10 hours on Google, 10 hours on YouTube, figuring out how to make this happen, troubleshooting it, fixing the errors, and then they end up with this finished product. Now, when I say 10 hours, that 10 hours probably took 2 weeks. Because during that time that you're doing that, you start out with like, oh my gosh, I'm amazing. I'm going to get this amazing freebie offer on my website. Well, you come up with your first hiccup and you're like, I suck at this. I don't know if I could do entrepreneurship. I don't know what I'm doing. And then you're like, find that, in you, the ambition in you to go after it again. So you're riding this emotional roller coaster right from the onset. I don't know if you've experienced this, but I certainly have.
Yes.
Because tech can be hard. Like most of us did not come from a tech background. So this is what I would say, rather than fighting through the technical stuff and then the mindset stuff that we don't talk about often enough that comes with struggling, what you should do instead is hire somebody literally for 2 hours of their time to do it for you. This does a couple of things. You jump over all the mindset junk that you could get caught up in doing something that you're doing for the first time and that's probably going to be hard. So you literally, rather than spending 10 hours, 2 weeks, whatever, you're literally getting it accomplished in 2 hours. Like you can put a job up on something like Upwork and 2 hours later it could be done.
Yes.
And at Yes Boss, our hourly rate is $40 per hour. We're a luxury virtual assistant business. So I say that to say like you could easily find somebody for $40 or less an hour to do something like this. So think about it. If you're paying $80 for somebody to do this for you, but if you were to do it, it were to take 10 hours, essentially by spending that 10 hours, you're saying you're only worth $8 an hour. Ouch. Right. No, we need to give it to somebody else and can get it done faster. And then I want to add like a cherry on top of this. When you do that when you outsource this project, you want to ask the person who has done the project for you to record how they've done it. What this does is it enables you to have a clear picture of how to get it done for yourself if you want to do it moving forward. So you're never stuck with something somebody else has done for you, not knowing how to use it. It also gives you your very first asset in your business, because if you're thinking about building a company, it's really important to be keeping track of the processes and the things that are essential to growing your business. This video training is the very first thing that you can put in that like asset box. I call it a standard operating procedures manual, so an SOP. That video goes right in there. So later down the line, when you're ready to do it yourself or you're ready to bring on a team, you've started building that bank of how to build your business, how to run your business. Yeah. So that's what I would say to the person in the very, very beginning. Start getting used to leveraging your money to help you jump over some of these business hurdles.
Yes. And that's definitely something I want to talk about a little bit more, but I wanted to just revisit what you just said and do a little bit of recap, because you mentioned utilizing an online platform called Upwork, which is, I think it's just upwork.com. And but through it, you can find a lot of really helpful individuals who can help you with literally anything. Graphic design, they can do the tech, they can write things for you. I think maybe not Upwork. There's also Fiverr.com. That's where I had someone record my very first podcast intro. Do you have any other, I know you have YesBossVA.com. Any other ones that you know of?
You know what I really like? I like utilizing Facebook groups.
Ooh.
There are so many Facebook groups where, look, I was that person. I was that person trying to be an entrepreneur, but really struggling, but knew how to do some of that tactical stuff, that technical stuff. And if I had seen somebody post in one of the Facebook groups, hey, I need help doing this thing. I have a 2-hour budget. Is anybody willing to do it? You're going to get flooded with people interested in that.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And depending on the Facebook group, you can probably kind of specify to the people who have a similar vibe to you as well.
Totally.
That's really helpful. And I also wanted to kind of go back and revisit this idea of how you frame the concept of spending 10 hours, but that 10 hours can turn into 2 weeks, because what really happens is you get in your head, and not even just I don't know how to do the tech and now I'm hating on myself because I don't know how to do the tech, but you also get in your head because you overthink everything that's going to go in.
Yes.
You're like, is the color right? Is the font right? Is this, should I do it with the picture on the left or the right? And you just
I know, right?
you overthink something that, I hate to break it to you, but it's not that important at the end of the day. Like 1 year from now, you're going to look back and be like, man, I wasted so much time doing so many things. And so
Yeah.
that's such a value to be able to pay someone to just keep you from being in your head. And I know that kind of sounds ridiculous, and it does sound like a luxury, and it is a luxury, but then I want to touch on and dive a little bit deeper into this idea of there's definitely, and I know because I have a lot of money coaches in my audience, we are the scrappy people. We are the people that like to figure it out on our own because we're trying to save all of our money. And I was naturally that way. And you touched on this earlier, talking about using your same mindset as it relates to your personal finances and bringing it into your business, unintentionally, and thinking about spending money from your personal financial life in your business. And I'd love for you to kind of touch on that a little bit more, because I think that there is a specific distinction there.
Oh, there totally is. I mean, look, you go shopping at Target and you want to spend as little as you possibly can, because the money that you don't spend, you get to keep in your pocket.
Right.
So you want to do things scrappy when it's your own finances. I get that. I am super scrappy when it comes to my personal finances. What I don't think that we understand early enough in business is that money can be used to leverage things. Like, if you go back to what my story was, when I was making just $15 an hour doing virtual assistant work, like, no entrepreneur is going to make less money than I did. You're probably not going to get hired for less than $15 an hour. So I was at like the bottom of the financial chain, right? I was making $15 an hour. But what happened is, when I realized that I could make $7 or $8 an hour doing nothing, I was able to leverage. I realized that removed a ceiling from me. So when you're thinking about the things in your business, so say you're a money coach and you're thinking about, the things that you need to get done to grow your practice, you've got to think about the opportunity cost as well.
Yes.
If you spend 10 hours or 2 weeks or whatever falling into the trap of like perfecting things or not getting it done because you're struggling to get it done, what opportunities are you missing out on? What people could you be connecting with rather than staying behind the scenes? I think this touches on something else. I think the perfection is actually another symptom of being scared. And when we frame it in a way of being a perfectionist, we can really romanticize that and look at it as like, I'm doing the right thing because I want to put my best foot forward and I want it to look really perfect. But look, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares if your logo was purple or if it was pink or if you chose that font or that font. You know what people care about? They care about you connecting with them. That's where we need to put our time, is in connection, not perfecting where the picture went, not, those things need to get done as quickly as possible so that we can invest our time connecting and serving. That's what is going to grow your business, not a perfect newsletter, not a perfect website, not any of that.
Yes. Yes. And I think one thing, and this is something I've seen sort of unspoken that people fear, is like, okay, I could spend 10 hours doing this, or I could pay someone to do this for 2 hours. But my fear is that 8 hours that I get back aren't that valuable right now because I haven't built my business to the point. And I mean, obviously that's just something that we need to decide to rethink and decide that that's not a mindset that's going to serve us and build the thriving business that we're trying to build. But also knowing that, it's not even worth stressing over if it's something that could get done in 2 hours. And sometimes it can be hard to let go of that money and see it though as an investment that's going to come back to you, because you got the time, plus you're going to get what you called an asset, which I think is something that no one ever really thinks about, is having those those standard operating procedures. Also having even someone that now you can reach back out to when you have to figure out how to do the next thing and the next thing.
Right.
And the next thing.
Yep. Yep.
So with this, I'd love to kind of keep going down the line. Let's say we're a coach, we've decided, okay, I need to bring on some help, some assistance in my business. What are some key tasks that you think are the best things for an online coach to leverage a VA, a virtual assistant to get them to help them with?
So I feel like I'm going to answer you in a way that's not the most direct, but I feel like there's a point that like really needs to be made with this.
Mm-hmm.
When we start to grow our business, we need to shift from when we grow our business and we're looking at outsourcing, there needs to be a slight shift in our delegation. And in the beginning, you're literally you're delegating like project-based stuff and task work. When you're noticing that you're needing somebody on more of an ongoing basis, you need to shift your thinking and you need to be hiring people, yes, that can do the task work, but that you're inviting into the vision of your company. What I see happening too much is we're focused on just giving somebody a task and we want them to execute the task perfectly, and then we're still stuck in that like very, very rigidness, that we're not inviting other people into the vision of your company. And that's when the next level of assets gets created, is people become your asset. So when you're just hiring somebody to do a task work, it's literally going to be overhead. It's literally going to be somebody that does something and you're then going to look at it and go, well, I could have saved money by doing that myself. However, when you bring people into your business and you're willing to share the vision of your company with them, they then become an asset to your company because they are also helping you reach towards those goals. So for example, with me, my mission is to eradicate entrepreneurial stress. My team knows this. My team is always looking for ways that we can be more effective and more efficient in doing this. They are they're pitching ideas to me about how we can do this. Something that happened with me is I took the time to tell my team that I felt like a really good way to start eradicating more entrepreneurial stress and create a bigger impact was doing podcast episodes and me pitching myself to be on podcasts. Well, you know what happened? I told my team this, and literally 6 months later, I still had not pitched myself to anybody. But I told my team what my vision was. So somebody on my team said to me, hey, Kristin, you know how you've been talking about pitching yourself for podcasts like all this time? How about you let me do it for you? Look, if I hadn't told my team that this was my vision, if I hadn't told my team what the vision that we all had collectively was, what my ambitions were, what I wanted to do, nobody would have ever stepped in. Nobody ever would have helped me. Nobody ever would have held me accountable. And what happened is within like 2 months, I think I had booked something like 6 podcasts because the person on my team just went after it. Was it perfect? Was it the way that I would have done it? I don't know. She pitched me to Marie Forleo and I just laughed. But look, she's ambitious and she's getting it done. And that is what happens when you think about your team as more than just a taskmaster. And what it also motivates your team to get the tasks done really well for you because they have a big picture scope that they're looking from. Yeah. So that's not exactly what your question was, but I guess I could answer it a little bit more specifically too, because we have a process when clients bring us on board to help make sure that we are doing the right things for their business.
I think that is a good way to think of it, because it's very true. When you just think about the tasks, you end up getting the task back and you're like, yeah, I probably could have done that by myself. But if you really bring someone into the vision and the mission of your business, they're then more empowered to even be self-starters and bring opportunity to you to say, hey, like the things that I'm working on, they might not even be moving the needle forward. How can I actually help work towards this overall mission that you have? And let's refocus there. But I think it can also be hard to find the people who are needle movers and who understand that too. So any good tips in terms of like interviewing or finding, the best VAs in the industry?
Yes. We have developed, it's like a 7-step hiring process because we've gotten really good at defining how to find those A players. I've hired really not so great people before, and then I've been put in a position where I have to fire people, and
Yeah.
I wanted to avoid that as much as possible. So we have developed a very comprehensive hiring process. There are two things I'll share that are really key to putting into place when you're trying to find somebody to build your team. The very first one is to help you weed out people right away that don't know how to follow instructions or just literally sending their resume to everybody under the sun. You want people who want to work with you because they like you and they're willing to take extra time to work with you. So what we do is in every one of our job postings, we put a specific subject that needs to be included in whatever, in their submission to us. What this enables me to do is I literally delete 50% of the applications that I get. I do not open it if the subject line is not exactly what I said it needs to be. This is just not the
Interesting.
time for you not to follow my instructions. This is first impressions. I won't even open it. And I would say don't be tempted to open it because I have opened them before and gone, "Oh, but they're really good." No, the fact that they can't follow instructions trumps everything that's in their resume.
Yes.
The second thing that we do is we have everybody do a test project. And that test project, the very first test project we do, because we do 2 test projects. The very first one, they have to do that test project before I ever even get on a phone call with them. And it's not a paid test project. What this does is it also, that people are serious. They're devoting some time to showing you their seriousness about working with you. And in that test project, you want to provide an opportunity for them to mess up. Basically, you're not giving them enough instruction to complete the job. Look, as entrepreneurs, that's going to happen. We're going to give people projects and we're going to forget a detail. We want to know what the heck they're going to do with that. How are they going to react when they get a project that doesn't have all the details? Are they just going to stop and be like, "Well, you didn't give me all the details, so I couldn't do it"? We don't want to work with those people. That's not good. So the exact task that we do is we were finding that we were doing a lot of email marketing for our clients. So we were loading a lot of emails into things like MailChimp or ConvertKit or whatever. So what we did is the test project is that the person that's applying schedules an email in MailChimp and they have to send that test email to us. We were not giving them a subject line, just completely neglecting it altogether. What we thought we wanted from them was for them to come back to us and ask us for that subject line. But what actually ended up surfacing is some A players that even far exceeded our expectations. What they did, and the people that everyone we've hired has done this, they did their own subject line based on the context of the email. They were not trying to check a box. They were thinking about what they were doing. They read the email. They came up with their own subject line. They sent the test to us and said, "Hey, I noticed that you didn't have a subject line, so I came up with a subject line. Let me know if you like it or you want an alternative." That's the kind of person we need to hire. People that are going to be ambitious, people that are not going to just sit around and wait for us, people that are going to continue to move forward. So those are 2 things that we've done to really find the people that stand out from the crowd.
I love that. And I love that you gave those very specific tests and ways to kind of start thinking about who to bring on. And the test project idea is brilliant and it's not too time consuming. So it makes me feel
No.
good about the idea of not paying, but giving them an opportunity to show their stuff.
Yeah.
And yes, this is brilliant. And these are really, really helpful tips. So thank you so much for sharing those. I'd love to jump into the money round. And this is going to be super quick because we talked extensively about money before we dove into the tangible tips. But I'll ask you the question that I ask everyone, which is, how do you make money today? What are all the different ways that you're making money in your life?
So I make money off of providing virtual assistant and online business management services to people. So my team, I make a profit off of all of the work that my team does. I don't do any virtual assistant work at all anymore. My role is to be a manager, and basically I see that as an encourager and honing in on how people in my team could be better leaders and be better, function more in their zone of genius. So my job is to support them, and then I make money off of the work that they do. I'm actually also pursuing something with with some education, figuring out how I can educate both entrepreneurs and virtual assistants or people that are just wanting to learn from what I've done. Because I say hacked the system so well, I really don't work a lot. I bring in new clients and then I make money because my team is really good at servicing them. And so I have time to go out there and start doing something else. And that is educating people. And that's been fun. I wouldn't say I'm making money doing that yet, but that's just a bonus perk.
It's in the pipeline.
There you go. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. We're going to go into the quick and dirty Q&A. These are just a couple fast-paced questions to wrap up the show. My first question has some very strict instructions.
Okay.
I want to know one completely random thing that you just can't stop thinking about lately, and it can't have anything to do with work. You can't make it about work. It has to be random.
Yeah. I've been thinking about foster care a lot. Yeah, we adopted my son, and just thinking about the implications of everything going on in the world and how that's impacting people in the foster system. What a sad answer. I'm sorry for bringing that down.
That's okay. It gives us a peek into your life and lets us know who you are. That's beautiful. What is something you love to do to step away from work?
I love reading fiction books.
What's your favorite fiction book that you've read in the last couple of years?
I like pretty much anything by Jodi Picoult or Diane Chamberlain. I don't know that I can pick a favorite.
Okay. We'll settle for authors.
I've moved on. I don't know. I don't remember it.
Awesome. What is your favorite account or person to follow on social media?
Anything Enneagram.
Okay. And the best piece of money advice you've been told that you would like to pass along?
I don't know that I've been told this, but I've kind of figured it out. Stop treating your business money like your personal money.
Awesome.
Choose to leverage.
Yes. Well, Kristin, thank you so much for joining us today. This was super informative, and we appreciate all of your golden nuggets that you shared. And tell us how we can stay in touch and where we can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me at yesbossva.com. If you're interested in figuring out, how you can determine what moves the needle in your business before you start actually hiring anybody, we have the first step of our 3-step blueprint. It's at yesbossva.com/work-less-make-more. So this is the very first step. Before you delegate, you've got to do this first. You can find me on Instagram. We occasionally post there, but it's not a big part of our strategy. You can find me more on LinkedIn.
Cool.
That's awesome. Where I'm hanging out.
Awesome. We will definitely send people your way and put your links in the show notes. Again, thank you for joining us. This was so much fun.
Thank you for having me. I agree. I really enjoyed this.
And that's a wrap. Episode 182 with Kristin Molenaar. If you want to get at the resources that she mentioned in this episode, check out the show notes by going to wanderwealthypodcast.com/podcast/episode 182. And do not forget, there are only a couple of days left until enrollment closes for the Wealthy Coach Blueprint. If you're ready to step up and step out as a money coach and start changing lives, building a scalable and sustainable business from the ground up, then head to wanderwealthy.com/apply to check out all the details of the blueprint and sign up for our one-on-one strategy session. There are, again, so few spots remaining, and I want to make sure we get the chance to chat and see if it is the right fit for you. So head to wanderwealthy.com/apply. And until we chat again next week, I hope you wander wealthy.